Thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to go over our Pulse archive software. So for those of you who may not be familiar with our company, we've been in business forever. We've worked with Macola forever. All of our customers are either manufacturers or distributors. We're located in Cincinnati, Ohio. And what we do is we develop software that makes your Macola software easier to use. The picture on the right is a picture of me on the shop floor at one of our customers. So as we look around for products to work on, we're looking for problems. And this is our story on how this product came about. Starting a long time ago, when I first started working with Macola, there was really no way to get a handle on the number of records that were in the database. Macola provides these purging utilities, but they're very hard to run and they're cumbersome. So over time, there just became a general feeling among customers that just a general reluctance to purge anything. And the whole idea was, if I purge it, I might need it later, even though it might be 15 years old. The concept is I might need it later. So we're faced with customers who were reluctant to purge anything, even though they knew that by purging, the database would slim down and things would run faster. But Macola didn't make it any harder or any easier, because there was no way to view the number of years, the number of records by year. And again, here I'm saying that this quote that came up many times, I just might need that data to look at. If I do go ahead and purge, I might just need that data at some point. Nobody likes to get criticized. So the whole problem here is no purging. It's intimidating, so nothing gets done. So we came along and we decided that if people were not willing to purge, they might be willing to archive. So what do we mean by archive? We mean that we're taking information out of the main database and we're putting it in a secondary Macola database. So it doesn't get purged, it just gets moved, and it's available forever. It's available into the future forever. So part of our solution also was to be able to pinpoint where we needed to archive. So if you had 10 years worth of inventory transactions, the discussion would be, well, as a company, can we get by with 3 years, 4 years? So the idea is people wanted to be able to control the number of months of data that they wanted to retain. So we developed this application, Pulse Archive, where you run it monthly. And at the end of each month, if you've specified 24 months of information or 36 months, when you get to the 37th month, it's just going to lop that data and put it into another Macola database where that information will be available forever. It takes about 45 minutes to run. So this was our solution to solve this problem, where people didn't want to purge, even though they knew that it was going to result in Macola running slower and slower. So at the same time, you may not be familiar with some of the other products that we're the leading developer of add-on products for the Macola market. Our Pulse dashboard and reporting software is our main product. Pulse Archive. Pulse Lockbox is designed to bring in customer remittances, whether they come in through credit cards, they come in through check, they come in through EDI. Our Pulse e-commerce software is where we're importing customer orders into Macola. Then we have a wide range of utilities, maybe for maintaining your item master file, or maintaining bills of material, or maintaining price codes. But the point being that we develop these and we're constantly coming up with new products. Our newest product, for example, was to solve the problem of people who are still using Macola Progression, and there's still hundreds of companies out there, but they don't have any way to process ACH payments to vendors. So we came up with a utility for that. So let's recap. Data is not purged. Data is moved to an archive database. You decide the number of months to retain for each data file, And the result will be your Macola database will be smaller and processing will be faster. So let's talk and visually, how does this work? As I mentioned before, each month records older than the retention time period are moved. So you're seeing on the left side, that's your Macola main database. And then on the right side, larger, meaning that that's the database that continues to grow because it has all of the old data in it. And to prove the point here, people will say, well, how can I get into my archive database? So I have an example here. This is the login screen for Macola ES. And you're seeing this is your main company 001, and the archive company is 001 archive. If you're running Macola progression, it's the same way. In this case, data 800 is your Macola database. So the idea being that for people who do need to go back and look at that archive data, that they have that ability. But I think you're thinking through this along with me, and you're seeing that the answer is that nobody ever goes into the archive database. When I say never, meaning very, very rarely, but it's there in case somebody needs it, and we've solved that problem of people being reluctant to purge. Okay, so let's take a look at the user interface for the Pulse archive software. So we have a menu bar across the top, and we'll go over some of that, but let's take a look at these columns here. We have arbitrarily put in an A, B, or a C in terms of the importance of archiving. So in other words, if you just want to focus on the A's, that will still provide a lot of benefit. This is the name, the database to be affected. Now, when we archive in sets of data. So for example, the accounts receivable open item file also has a companion history file. So if you're going to archive one, you have to archive both at the same time. And then we have the number of months that we want to retain. So for example, on this third one here, in AR open item file, we're going to keep 24 months worth of data. And then we have the ability, we want a total flexibility here to be able to archive once a month, which means like archive on demand, or you could specify a particular month that you wanted to archive. Let's say that your year end is in March and you want to archive only once a year in April. Or you could specify, so those are the options. The difficulty with trying to zone in on 1 month is that you typically forget, and it really doesn't make any difference because the rules of the number of months you're retaining, you're not retaining for month end or year end. So this archive on demand is really the one that you want to work with. And we do provide as an option more flexibility, just not archive at all. Then we have a column here that shows the results of archiving. So you can see here that this is showing today's date. You know, I was practicing getting ready for this presentation. So it tells you the date and the time that it was last archived. Okay, so let's talk about something that you'll think of later, and that is, what is this all masters? In other words, let's say that I added a new vendor, a new item, a new bill of material, a new customer to my main database. Eventually, I need that to be in the archive database, and I need to be able to have that customer record, not just their sales activity. So what we've done in this all masters is we specified about 30 different tables that need to be archived every time to keep things in sync. So all the codes, all of the just the different kinds of codes that Macola has in the code table, the vendor types, the customer types, all that. So that typically is done every single time, is archived every single time. So the way you might be saying, well, how do I get down? How do I know? How do I come up with any? How do I make a decision here? Because everybody's afraid of archiving too much data. Well, to start off the process, you can, and this was in the invitation for today's meeting. You could download a standalone report, a standalone utility that will give you an archive. It'll give you the number of records per table per year, and you can send that to us, and then we will send you back a recommendation. So I'll give you an example of what that looks like. Here's the report that comes out of the standard software. So it's telling you these are the important files, these are the audit trail files, so on and so on. And then it's going to go year by year. Now this is a skimpy little test database, but it's going to tell you the number of records by year and so on. So if you export that to Excel and you send that to us, this is what we will send you back. This is an example of a real database, a real evaluation. So this particular company had transactions going back to prior to 2019. So we decided that probably 3 years, our recommendation was 3 years of data could be retained comfortably, and the yellow meant that we were going to archive. So yellow equals archive, green means something else, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So this just gives you a starting point. Now, in your team, you may decide, no, 3 years, a little too aggressive, nobody can make up their mind. So my suggestion would be make it 4 years and live with that for 4 months, 6 months, get comfortable with the process, and then whittle it down maybe to 40 months and then 36 months. So there will be a lot of uncertainty among the team. Usually what we recommend is go to a manager's meeting or send around an email to the managers. So that would be the accounting manager, supply chain, inventory, production, so on, purchasing, and then ask for their, how many years of old purchase orders do we need to retain? How many years of old transactions do we need to retain? So so the yellow is, I'm saying, you can get rid of those. Now, green means, like this is the purchase order line file, and they have open purchase orders going back to 2019. And it's like, well, how can that happen? How can we have open unreceived purchase orders that are 5 or 6 years old? That's not going to happen. But what this means is that you never close those orders properly. And we have a white paper that we wrote that's available to everybody on how to properly close old purchase orders. And a one sentence explanation is they are to be saved, they are to be set to an H status, H as historical, not a C status. You would think, oh, I just need to make a C. C is closed, right? Well, no, C is not closed. So this, in this case, they had some work to do where they had never gone and closed those properly. So you export the file to Excel, you send it to us, we go through this process. The audit trail tables are something else that's a big misnomer among Macola. Really, after 1 or 2 years goes by, those audit trail tables have no meaning. In other words, we don't need to be caring about a person who keyed a customer order in 5 years ago, or the change they made to an order 6 years ago. So those typically can be pared down. They just take up a lot of space. So this is part of our evaluation. We are experts at knowing the sensitivity of this. And I can tell you right now, this one table here, the inventory transaction history table, IMINV TRX, for those of you who are technical, that is the culprit. That is the table that slows everything down. Okay. So once, and Bart, maybe I'll stop for a minute and
Yep.
does somebody have a question or something I've overlooked to talk about?
We've got a couple of questions. First one is, master files are marked will not be archived. Are you saying that the data in those tables is always copied to the archive, but not
No,
purged from the live database?
no, you caught me. What an excellent eye. No, in a moment I'm going to run this archive process, and I wanted to not archive those to make it run faster and only take 3 or 4 seconds but no, you would always set that to be archive on demand. I'll leave this the way it's supposed to be. So you get a star for being the most observant today. Thank you.
We've got one more with that on that same column. Does the frequency number have to be the same across related sets of data?
Well, to use this example of the open item file, this is a progression file, open item file and the open item history, they are in pairs. So it is not possible to have a different number of months for each one. But typically for inventory files or production files or purchasing files, maybe you would have them all be the same, if I'm understanding the question. So if I sort this down, for example, by, it's not sorting. Maybe I have to do it here. All the accounts payable would be together. All of the inventory files would be together. Maybe all be 24 months or 36 months. I purposely have these not archiving because in a moment I want to run the actual archiving program and I don't want it to take a minute. I want it to take 6 seconds so we can keep the flow going. Good questions. Anyone else, Bart?
No, that's it for now. Feel free to, if anybody else has a question, feel free to ask it under the questions area.
Okay. So now I'm going to run the archive program. It's only going to take, I had it pared down to 6 seconds. Maybe it'll take 10 seconds, but everybody will understand. So there's a password here. Okay, and what it's doing, it is going through, it's going to display things in a moment, but it happens so fast that before, oh, there it is. It took 12 seconds. You see, I included the master files. So when we first developed this, we didn't have this user interface screen. And some people would say, well, this is taking forever to run. I'm going to kill it. It must not be working right, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's just that they had so much data and it was maybe the first time. So the idea being that we put this user interface in. Normally this would go slowly. It would just take this one, maybe a minute later this one, and then this one, and so on. But it's to tell you that it's actually being successful. And it tells you down here how long it's running, and it does tell you that it is running, or in this case, it has been completed. So this is just the user interface. So the very first time you run this, the idea would be to maybe just take just the inventory files first, just the purchasing files first, get those going, get a feel for how long it's taking. You have to run this outside of normal operations, and then once you're confident that it's working and you're used to it, then run it on a monthly basis, and it will take less than an hour. But what's going to happen now is when I X out of this, you'll see these dates update in a moment. There's the moment. Yep, 2:48. So this is now telling you that if you went back and you ran the archive report again, that this one indeed would be at 24 months. This one would indeed be at 48 months. We also have built into this a reindexing process. Now, for those of you who are technical, if you were to go into SQL Management Studio and run the SQL reindexing program, that's what we're running here. But most people don't have access to that, or don't understand that, or don't want to run it themselves. So, but we do find that reindexing is extremely important. And our observation is that 95% of the people out there are re-indexing on a frequent basis, but they're not doing any archiving. But we have both of these in here. So this re-indexing just goes through and tells you that it's making things run better. So I'm going to show you this report or this audit trail. What we're doing is we're showing you, now remember that I'm just using dummy data and I'm running this over and over again. So the number of records before and after is going to be the same typically. But this is to tell you that, that it is working, what the number of records that it archived, the number of records that remain, and so on and so on. So you'll have this forever as a audit trail of what has been happening. And we also, I mentioned earlier that everybody who's on this meeting today doesn't have the archive software already, but if you download the standalone archive report, run it, export it to Excel, and email it to me, then we will send you back this kind of evaluation that will help you at least see where your issues are. Most people do not know, because it's very difficult to get this kind of report unless you're a developer. But most people do not have any comprehension of how many years of data. This company that we're working with right now that has data going back to 2006. You know, that's 2006 to 2016 to 2023. It's like, oh my gosh. And in some cases, customers like this, they're arguing or they're complaining that the software is running, Macola is running slower, but it's not evident. Maybe at month end it might be evident. For people who are running our Pulse dashboard and analytics software, they will see, because it runs much faster than Macola, they will see a degradation there or speed up as they archive. So again, if you're interested in at least knowing the reality of where you are as a company, how many records you have going back, you can run that standalone program. You can choose to export it to Excel and email it to us if you want to, and we'll give you back this color-coded report here. Typically, again, archive, audit trail tables, the information is not useful after a couple of years. And they have these transaction tables which you can't touch. And then you'll find this, what we call other tables. And it's like, it goes on and on and on and on and on and on. And you're saying to yourself, what in the world is this? And we can't figure that out either. But it is in there and it doesn't need to, they're typically extremely small tables with maybe just a couple hundred records or 1,000 records. So we don't worry about those. Those do not slow things down. Macola doesn't use those for anything important, and our dashboard software doesn't use that either. So that is the gist of the way this software runs. You know, I took you through the problem of people being reluctant to purge. Everybody thinks that if they purge, they'll be criticized because they purge too much. So archiving, where it's going to be, if we go back to this PowerPoint, you will have this archive data will be there permanently, and then certain people, you can give them access and they can go back to that archive database if they need to. Well, that pretty much wraps up to my presentation, Bart. Are there more questions? Is there anything that I forgot to ask or forgot to mention?
Yeah, a couple more questions. Someone wants to know if they know how to run it at the beginning and maybe it's quite some time till they run it again. How does the help desk work as far as retraining or asking questions?
Oh, well, that's a very good question. With all of our software, You get unlimited training, unlimited retraining, where maybe somebody has forgotten, maybe hasn't used the product in a while. That's all available. So, and with all of our products, we provide unlimited phone support, unlimited questions, unlimited hand holding. So if you want us to, dial in at 8 o'clock at night and help you run this the very first time or the first time and the second time, we'll be happy to do that. But again, the benefit is if you run this monthly. And if you tend to run it once a year, then it'll just seem to get forgotten.
All right. And the last question is, does use of archive eliminate the need to purge?
Yes and no. Very, very good point. Once you start down the road of archiving, and maybe you had 15 years worth of data and you pared it down to 24. At some point, you'll say to yourself, well, this archive database of ours is just huge. It has records going back to 2006. Nobody needs that, blah, 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 especially in the audit trail files. So we do provide optional no-cost purging routines. What some people are doing, once they see this report, where did it go? Once they see this report, they say, we have to get rid of this data. There's no use archiving it because we're never going to need it. We should have gotten rid of it years ago. So we do have optional no-cost purging routines that basically say, I'll give you the example of a customer that has data going back to 2006. It goes in and it says, we're going to get rid of all data prior to, I'll just use an arbitrary number, 2015. We're going to purge all of that data, and then we're going to have our starting point be 2015 to 2023. But that date could be any. But so these are very, very insightful questions. Yes, we do recommend, in a lot of cases, to get rid of the data and not take up the time with archiving. There's one question that hasn't been asked, and that is, going back here, where does this archive database come from? What on day one, what does it look like? Is it empty? And the answer is no, it's not empty. It's a duplicate copy. It could be like last week's backup copy. It's a duplicate copy of your main database. So we don't like take a gazillion records and then try to archive that. The archiving would take 2 weeks. So we're starting with a full database from which we are then paring down from the main database. So the one consideration is you'll have to have disk space to create the archive database, and that might motivate you to actually purge some years of data before you get started. So these are excellent questions. Thank you. And if there are other questions once we finish up, if you have other questions, you have my email address or our email address, and feel free to ask us more questions. Any other questions that came in, Bart?
No, that's it.
Okay. Guess that's about it for now. Thank you all for joining. And again, if you have questions, if you're using our software, we have unlimited phone support. If you're thinking about the software, feel free to ask us. The standalone report would be very, very good because it won't take anything. You don't even have to export it to Excel and send it to us. You can just use it yourself. So, okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of the week and good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.